right, I'd like to call the committee of the whole meeting for Monday, April 18th, 2022 to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Gaffino.
Here.
Trustee Curtis. Trustee Gately.
Here.
Trustee Lowry.
Here.
Trustee Nedved.
Here.
Trustee Salazar. Here.
All right, thank you. Audience comments, and we'd like to speak. Trustee comments? Okay, under discussion, item 1, ice cream drive, Steve.
Thank you. I'm going to hand it off to Mike Toth, who's going to do a discussion of a concept review for a property at 950 Ice Cream Drive that is currently under development.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. The property is 950 Ice Cream Drive. It's the property that's currently under construction. It's 9 acres at the northeast corner of Randall Road and Ice Cream Drive. It was approved as part of a PUD last year. As part of that PUD, it was intended that this building was going to be a speculative industrial building. Since then, the property owner has been working with a food manufacturing group that's looking to come into the property and the building itself. There would be some minor changes to the actual building and property that would be needed. As part of the PUD, I actually have the authority to approve minor changes tonight. So what we're still going to do is kind of go through them and then allow the property owners to give a presentation, gather any feedback we have, and just also in the air of transparency, just let you know what could potentially be coming to the site. But as far as the use goes, as a conservative land use classification, it's deemed to be medium industrial, which in the I2 underlying zoning district, which that's in, it is considered a permitted use. So the use is permitted. We have a PUD that allows me to sign off on minor changes. You'll notice that there will be some changes to the site plan and changes to the building, but those are still under my purview. We're just kind of going to take any feedback or comments the board might have, but it is just more of an FYI as to what could be coming to this property. So with that, I'll go ahead and come up and speak.
Hi, good evening. I'm Brandon Talbert with Austin Consulting, a site selection consultant that's supporting the company with evaluating this location and this property for this potential food plants. As Mike shared, exploring a potential lease of this facility with the development team, and just wanted to share a little bit more about the project, and in the interest of due diligence, confirm that the site could meet our requirements. So I'll pass it over to Lionel to share with the company team to share a little bit more about what the project would bring to the community if they were to locate here.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks for having us. Lionel Mendoza will be looking to operate the site. Wanted to share you a little bit more about the company and the economic impact for the community. We'll be looking to hire 220 employees in the first 5 years, and then another 200 employees, bringing the total up to 400 employees after 5 years. We estimate our investment on phase 1, the first 5 years, of $50 to $60 million. The company itself, we are leading the industry in hourly pay for entry level. We estimate that we'll bring around 13 million annual salaries, including benefits as startup, and up to 24 million at full capacity. We provide a full vacation package for 1K to our employees. Also something very unique, we are the #1 in the country for free tuition, not only for the employees, but also for their spouses. We provide medical, dental, and vision to the employees. In terms of the impact to the community, we were talking about warehouse versus now light manufacturing. That will be reducing the truck traffic, 50 trucks a day, and we're estimating bringing the truck traffic down to 20-25 a day versus 75. In terms of car, we are looking at around 100 cars per shift, and that will be in different phases. So it's not 100 cars at once, but 50 and 50 later. We have been working also on the appeal of the facility with appropriate fencing and trees to minimize the visual impact for the community. As well as in terms of steam, it will be very minimum. There will be a little bit of steam from the boiler and searing equipment, but no more that a restaurant will have. Also, the way we prepared the food, it's a cooking bag technology. So because we cook in bag, there is no steam or minimum odor coming from the manufacturing due to the technology we use. Our organization is committed to sustainability and environment with the goal to be net zero as a national organization by 2040. And as we mentioned, we are engaged in the community where we operate and regularly invest in the local community where we are.
Good evening. My name's Tim Stuckley. I'm with Transwestern Development. So both Ted and I were here for the initial approval. So what we went ahead and did was basically put the images from the initial approval of the speculative building last year, and then what the intention is for this potential user. So as you can see on the screen right now, this was our original rendering for the initial approval process. So this is looking northeast from the corner of Randall and Ice Cream Drive, essentially. And then the next slide will show a slight color change. And this is just to go with the potential user's color scheme of their company. So that's a minor one. We're just looking to change that blue to a black. And then this is the original site plan. So if you could see, the way it was laid out was all your auto parking in the front, and then the rear of the building was all truck court with trailer parking on the north side. And if you recall, some of the comments were screening that. This site plan doesn't show the landscaping, but we've got screening pretty heavily on that north curb line just to help hide some of that trailer parking. But you could see the next one will show the proposed improvements. So we layered in the landscaping on this. So essentially, given that there's lower truck volume, it's not a typical distribution user, we were able to put some additional auto striping in the rear of the building, which required some more islands, some more landscaping, just to comply with the typical ordinance for auto parking. And then it's kind of hard to see, but there's a fence line then that kind of zigzags in the back there. So we would be reducing the trailer stalls, yeah, right there, down to 10 stalls, and those will be pushed to the east. So visually, that's going to be more appealing as you're coming south on Randall Road. It's going to appear to be more of a typical auto lot as you're looking to the southeast there. And then there will be a gate on the northeast corner of the building. So it'll be a controlled truck yard that's required for safety, and that's for their compliance also. And you notice we positioned that up in the northeast corner to allow trucks to get off of Ice Cream Drive and have some queuing space along that eastern access road. So given the low truck volume and having that few hundred feet of road on the east side of the building, there shouldn't be any issues with trucks sitting on the roads. So then the next slide is the elevations. This was the original approved elevations with the blue scheme. The next one, it's a little tough to see because the lines are a little heavier, but essentially the grays are staying the same and the blacks, the blues will be changed to the blacks, as you can see. Another thing to note on the very top elevation, that north elevation, there will be some water tanks out back. At first we were looking at having those a little taller, but the potential client was able to lower those to keep those lower than the roof line, so they're not gonna stick out too much when you're coming down Randall Road. And with the landscaping, it'll blend in nicely with the building. And that's about it.
All right, thank you. Any questions or anything?
Yeah, when do you think you want to open up? When do you get going?
So our base building is supposed to be complete June 1st. The potential tenant has quite a bit of build out. I don't want to speak for them, but what were you guys anticipating? About 18 months it would take for them to do their build out and be operational.
So then you'll be hiring people for this processing? Is that what you would call it? Like processing food? Okay. I think it's fine. I like that you're supply benefits, you know. That's good.
I think it's actually a better use than the warehousing, in my own opinion. I think it's less of a demand in that area and providing more jobs than some, 6 or 8 people running forklifts and things like that. So it seemed like a nice fit. Todd?
Yeah, I like the fact there's gonna be less trucks, honestly. So I'm a fan of it.
I think it's an improvement.
My concern was you had mentioned something about minimal steam coming. Now that's a objective term. I mean, minimal, or is it going to be something 24 hours a day where it's going to be having a smokestack effect?
Yeah, the steam is going to be very, very minimal. So we process during the day. So it's just going to be during the day and it's water steam, but it's going to be, when I say minimal, it's not like you're going to have steam flowing. It's just going to be like the quantity you will have in a restaurant. So not big steam view.
I liked everything that I heard. I think it's a better use and the company, I mean, there was nothing that I didn't like. I was good for all of it.
All right, thank you. Steve, anything else to add or what?
No, this was just because it was a minor change. It's a little different than what the board saw. Mike and I thought it was a good idea to get some feedback because it is a different use than what we thought it was intended. So it was good to get the board's feedback tonight.
Mike, good, okay.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Mhm. All right, item 2, Steve.
Item number 2 is a discussion of purchasing body worn police cameras and I should say police body worn cameras. And Chief, did you want to open up for Scott?
Yeah, if I could, thank you. Like Steve said, this is a review basically of regarding the purchase of body worn cameras for the police department. Just a little background, due to the passage of the Safety Act in 2021, all police departments in Illinois must implement the use of body worn cameras. And due to the population of North Aurora, our department would have to, by law, implement their use by January 1st of 2025. We actually started looking into the use of the body worn cameras prior to the passage of the act, and this is where we're at today with it to bring it to the board. During the summer of 2021, staff contacted a place called Marketplace. It's a business that specializes in researching and comparing products based on specifications that we provide to them. Marketplace was provided with several details that were required of the body worn cameras that the village would be seeking to purchase. Features such as ease of use, specific triggers that engage the cameras, software and video storage, and the cost were all things that were considered. The field was narrowed down to 3 companies: Axon, WatchGuard, and Utility. A pilot test was conducted on body worn cameras for all 3 of the companies. We had officers using the cameras in typical police settings. We had records clerks using the software from each of the companies to store videos and make recordings, and ratings were kept for all 3 of the companies. Based on the pilot testing results, the 2 companies that staff felt were best suited to the needs of the department users were Axon and WatchGuard. Of those 2, Axon had the best rating. It was rated as the easiest and most convenient camera to use, easiest software to utilize, best picture quality, and the camera was the most secure and it never fell off of its mount. While testing the body cameras, staff also looked into the pricing of squad mounted cameras, the cameras that are on each of our squads, which we do have now. We currently have WatchGuard cameras. Those are due, they have about 2 more years of life on them before they're due to be replaced. In your memo, I put 2 different charts here, one with Axon pricing and one with WatchGuard pricing. The total cost for a 5-year plan, which both companies are 5 years, for 32 Axon body cameras and 12 Axon squad cameras, the total is $264,846 over 5 years. And the total for 32 WatchGuard body cameras and 12 WatchGuard squad cameras is $252,200 over 5 years, with a difference of $12,646 or a little over $2,500 a year. Axon is a little bit more. But based on our pilot test results, staff ratings, and the safety and security of the cameras staying attached to the officer, staff is recommending purchasing the Axon body cameras as well as the Axon squad cameras. The body cameras and the squad cameras would be compatible if you bought them from the same company, and it's important so that only one platform and one storage platform is being utilized, which results in the continuity of storing your videos, evidence, etc., in just one place rather than in different places. The current squad cameras would need to be replaced within 2 years anyways, and it is anticipated that by time Axon squad cameras would be implemented, there would only be about a year of life left on the WatchGuard ones. We were told Axon squad cameras are about 11 months out due to everything else that's taken forever to come in. Axon cameras are also would be fully integrated with the 911 dispatching CAD system. Just some background on them. Axon's warranty covers loss. WatchGuard does not. So if an officer loses the camera, it breaks or whatever, Axon will fully cover it. WatchGuard will not necessarily cover it. So I have some examples here just to show you the difference. They're both about the same size. Get this thing right. They're both about the same size here. Okay, this is the WatchGuard one. WatchGuard attaches with just a little button at the top. That comes off very easy. I know there were officers that had these come off during their shift, and it wasn't even due to like a struggle or anything like that, because all you got to do is hit that top button right there, it pops right off. That's WatchGuard. The Axon camera goes on. You have to turn it, and it pops off that way. That's not coming off. That is very difficult.
Better fit.
Yeah, much better fit. It's even, you can feel it when you turn it. I'd be happy to pass these around too if you guys want to see
I
them.
think we're good.
So, but with me tonight is Deputy Chief Scott Bezecki. He was very involved in looking into this, and he's got a PowerPoint program that he'll go over kind of the background of it and how we got to this point. And also via Zoom is Nathaniel from Marketplace, just in case you have any questions about their process or what it was that they did. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Scott.
Thank you. So when we started this about 18 months ago, some of the main things that we were looking for out of this was that all hardware and accessories were included, that it included an evidence management and cloud-based storage, redaction capabilities, numerous activation triggers to activate recording, and that it integrates with squad cameras so that we're only on one platform. So we engage Marketplace, and they use their knowledge of the market to provide information on about 25 companies. We went through that list of companies and identified 4 that had the capabilities we needed and were had good reputations. We requested more information from 4 companies: Axon, GTAC, Motorola, which bought WatchGuard during the 18 months we've been doing this, and Utility. 3 companies responded. GTAC chose not to respond. So we did field tests with Axon, Motorola, WatchGuard, and Utility. So what we did is at different times, the officers wore the cameras during their duties, and they recorded actual calls and traffic stops, and they filled out forms to indicate their preferences. So with the vendor responses, the main things we were looking for to activate the cameras, we wanted it to be user-friendly so that the technology worked for the officers. In other words, that the officers didn't have to think too much about activating their camera. They just had to do their job. So if there was a threat, they deal with the threat instead of calling timeout and activating their body camera. So the triggers that will start these cameras is a button press. There's a big button on the front. You can activate it that way. They'll activate if you draw your sidearm. They'll activate if you draw your taser, or if you remove the rifle rack or from the rack in the squad, or if the squad exceeds a predefined speed limit, or is involved in a crash, and also if you activate the lights or siren. Both of the systems have all those triggers. The one that only Axon has is proximity. So what that means is if we're on a call and I draw my sidearm that causes my body cam to activate, and there's another officer within 30 feet, their body camera activates as well. Even if maybe they didn't see the threat that I saw, it will activate their camera as well. No other camera will do that. And we like that for the reason of different angles on potentially the same thing. We wanted to make this so that the officers weren't having to think about it. They just do their job and the technology worked for them. So the pilot scoring, we asked the officers to complete survey forms. And the main areas that we were asking them about were the mounting, the ease of use, and the video quality, as well as their overall rating. And I won't bore you with the actual numbers line by line, but what we did is we asked them to rate on either a 3-point or a 5-point scale. And then we averaged those based on the percentage of the possible points they could get. So at the aggregate, Axon came out 90% of the possible, WatchGuard came out 50% of the possible, and Utility came out just about 65% of the possible. The records clerks use the back end of the system to process videos, to make copies, and all the kinds of tasks that they would normally do. Main areas were ease of use and video quality. And again, Axon rated 91%, WatchGuard rated 60%. So these are some actual screenshots from the two different systems, Axon on the left and WatchGuard on the right. And these are both at, I believe it's 720p high definition quality. And these are nighttime ones, so very similar type traffic stops. And I think at night was where the difference in the video quality is a little bit more apparent in some of the detail that you can see in the Axon, reading the gauges on the car versus the left, the WatchGuard on the right is a little bit better. And then this is from an officer squad sitting in the car, a little more detail on the left than on the WatchGuard. So again, here's the total of the pilot results, 90% to 50%, and then the pricing. So these are not leases per se. They call it a solution as a service, which means at the end of it, we own the equipment, but we're paying licensing fees and storage, and which are by far the most expensive. The equipment isn't that expensive. It's the service that costs the most money. So when you look at the costs per average for each year, Axon is just a little bit more expensive, about $2,500 more per year. But our request is that Axon is the better product for us at least, and so we're going to ask that the board approve purchasing Axon cameras. The main decision factors here: ease of use, stability, that they stay on. We're a little nervous about the WatchGuard cameras falling off in a struggle, and then also that's not covered under warranty. Whereas if they fall off with Axon, no questions asked, the cameras are replaced with the Axon warranty. And then all the different triggers. Basically, the camera activates when any of the main things you think is a critical incident, like drawing a gun, a sidearm, driving fast, getting in a crash, all those things that are typically high liability for the police. The cameras are set to automatically activate for those because we want to capture those moments so we can see what happened and be able to defend our officers, because we know they're doing the right thing the vast majority of the time, and we just want to capture that so we can show that.
Does WatchGuard do that too?
Do
Activate other cameras?
no, they do not. So the main triggers like drawing a gun, pulling your rifle rack, driving fast, all those things, they both do. The one that WatchGuard does not do is activate somebody else's camera. So if I draw my gun, but Chief Fisher does not, his WatchGuard camera will not activate until he draws his gun or does one of those things.
I think it's economically speaking, it's a better bang for your buck to go with Axon.
Yeah,
You get much more for the dollar than you do with a
it's
little
also a
less
better
money.
fit. It's a safer product and it's more solid. The pictures are better. I mean, it's a minor fee increase. So yeah, Axon is where I'm at.
I think it's worth the extra money. I think it's a very important purchase, and that they work well. And so I think it's well worth the money. I don't really think in the scheme of things it's that much, and I think the differences are really important for the police department.
What happens after 5 years? Like, how long is the equipment good for? I mean, I know you said you got to update the software, but how long do these things last? Just, I'm more
Well,
curious.
I mean, this is kind of new in our world.
Yeah.
One of the first around here that has these is has the Axon is Elgin, and they got theirs in 2017, so they're into their second go round here. We will get new. Both the systems provide a body camera refresh at year 2.5. So we'll be refreshing the technology. If there's a newer version out at that point, we will get the newer version. At the end of the contract, it'll be up to us whether or not to sign a new contract and get new body cameras and car cameras, or to only pay the licensing and continue with the current equipment. And I think what we do there is going to depend on how the cameras are holding up and what technology is available, how it's improved, and that's a decision, for a few years down the road. But that at the end, for instance, the car cameras, we would get new ones at the end of year 5, and then we could just move on to another, just paying for the service and not buying new cameras. But I think that's all, depending on how they're holding up and all that.
How about storage? You said they store it for us, the info?
Yeah. Both of these quotes are for unlimited storage, and we opted for that to avoid, overage fees, because one of the things is when you have a video and you redact it and you send a copy to the state's attorney, you send a copy to defense attorneys, those end up as additional copies. So you have one video and you might end up with 5 copies of it. And the unlimited storage is going to cover us for all that.
If we switch companies, let's say down the road, somebody else says, hey, we like this one. Is that storage our info? Is that our property, or does that stay with them, or what happens there?
We would be given a reasonable amount of time to download all the videos and to put them into other storage. The way the current state law on body cameras and car cameras worked after the Safety Act is that any videos that are not evidentiary, that don't fall one of the several categories, we're required to delete those, where the old way was we could keep them indefinitely. Now, so we're not going to have as many, say 5 years down the road, but whatever is in there that is evidentiary, they'll be our property, and we'll be able to remove them from their system if we choose to go with a different vendor down
Is
the line.
redacting the same for both groups, or
They both do redacting. The staff's preference was that Axon was easier to do and less steps, more efficient. I think Axon has been at this a little bit longer and probably has some better features there.
better product? Yeah. Laura?
I think it's a great idea.
All right, sounds good. I think it's unanimous. So thanks.
Thank you.
Good report. All right, item 3, Steve.
Thank you. Item number 3 are revisions to Title II of the North Aurora Municipal Code. Some of these revisions were thoughts that came from the mayor, and part of that opened up the door to look at the administrative code in general. Whenever we open up the code, we like to look at the whole code. The administrative section of the code is actually pretty large. So there was some stuff in there that was fairly outdated, including positions, but they haven't been in part of the village for years. So we did a lot of cleanup. Some of this code was made when we didn't actually have, I believe, a full-time finance director or community development director, and definitely no public works director. So with that being said, I'm going to turn this over to Kevin. Kevin put together the memo, and Kevin, if you would, just please go through the substantive changes.
Of course, I didn't have this up, so I've got to go retrieve it.
And while he's doing that, in your packet, you have the draft ordinance is attached, and everything that is proposed for changes are redlined for you, or in my case, blue lined.
That's what I was going to ask. What's the difference between the red and the blue?
I don't know. And we were talking about this in the staff level, because I want to say one of us had it redlined and someone else had it blue lined.
Yeah, I think it's automatic based upon, my computer is set to something. I don't know how it got set there, but it is. And probably someone else's computer is set to a different color.
It was just funny. We're looking at the same document.
Yeah. So it was a group effort. Yeah, so there were provisions in the code that went back to 1967. So that's how obsolete some of the provisions were in this particular code. So it was very past time for it to be overhauled. A lot of it was, as Steve mentioned, updating existing position titles. We eliminated a large section that was just reproducing the Open Meetings Act, which actually has changed probably since I'm certain it has. I didn't go through to check whether it has changed, but I'm sure that many provisions of it had changed. So there's no reason to restate the Open Meetings Act. We simply state that there's compliance and we establish who is in charge of maintaining the compliance and so on. We streamlined supervision of the departments under the administrator. We eliminated some things that were required of the administrator that have never really been observed. Some of them are performed by the finance director rather than the administrator, so we kind of cleaned that up. And a lot of it was just obsolete provisions that needed to be updated. So, I mean, all the changes you can see. If anybody has any questions about any of the changes, we should probably talk about them.
I have one question on page, let's see what page this is. 8. It says this chapter, and one of the things it refers to, this chapter, does that mean the personnel code? What do you mean by this chapter? It's where the administrator takes the duties that the president of the village once was designated as having.
Yeah, so the code is divided up into titles and chapters and sections. So when it's saying this chapter, it's referring to the chapter heading would be the first 2 numbers. So if we're on page 8, we actually have 3 different chapters addressed on page 8. We have chapter 2.36, chapter 2.44, and chapter 2.56. Those are all chapter headings. The section numbers are the set of 3, and the title number is the first of the 3 numbers. So when it's referring to the chapter, it's referring to whatever those first 2 numbers are and everything underneath them, which we didn't reproduce all of the provisions of Title II. We only reproduced the provisions that we were changing.
Okay, thanks.
I'm good with all the changes.
Yeah.
I mean, we're good. I mean, I didn't see anything that out of the ordinary.
Todd?
Yeah.
Laura?
Good.
Mike?
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
I'm fine.
All right. Thank you. Kevin? Item 4, draft budget.
Okay. Item number 4 is the last review of the draft budget. The board has seen this as a budget overview presentation. Then it came back as a draft budget presentation. And this is the second draft budget presentation. So basically what Jason's going to do is just give you an update on all the final tweaks to the budget based on things that the board had mentioned at the last meeting. And then this is won't call it the last chance because it still has to get approved in a May meeting. But this is the last opportunity at the draft level before we make the final, we put the final report together and bring it to the board in May for approval.
Thank you. So I'm going to quickly just go through some changes that we've made, as Steve mentioned, from the last time we presented the budget, and then just turn it over for any questions or comments the board might have. So the first thing we did was we removed the full-time HR generalist position from the budget. This resulted in about $113,000 savings to the general fund. On the flip side, we added about $16,000 of contracted HR services. So this would be for doing a pay plan study or other miscellaneous things that this HR person would have done. We would just find ways to contract that out throughout the year if needed. We removed a part-time police record specialist for about $29,000. So if you would remember back from the first budget, we showed the intent was always to go to 3 full-time with 0 part-time. The budget showed 2 full-time, 2 part-time. One of those part-times was vacant at the time.
And then the other part-time person recently gave retirement notice. So basically, we're just taking, one of those part-times, the vacant one, and then one of them who's retiring is going away, just creating the 3. So we're going from 2 and 2 to 3 and 0, essentially. There was an increase of $5,000 to the contracted police social worker. Originally, we had it increasing from 1 day a week to 3 days a week for 30 grand. That was actually $35,000 when we went back and looked at it. So we just bumped that up $5,000. We reduced the IMRF rate. Originally, we had assumed 11.31% for the year, but we actually brought that down to 10.05%. We got the final or the preliminary rate for 2023. We had originally assumed it was going to be about 12%. The actual is about 9.07%. So we were able to bring the budget down $39,000 from the drop in the IMRF rate. There were some increases to health insurance. We got the final rates. Those went up a little bit. So we saw $8,800 increase on the health insurance side. And then a decrease actually of $888 on the dental insurance side. Increase in police vehicle and equipment charges. So this relates to the presentation we saw earlier for the police body cameras. As Chief mentioned, they have the car cameras for a few years. So there's some money accumulated in our equipment replacement fund for the car cameras. So essentially what we're doing is, in order to fit in about $55,000 for the body cameras, we're using that accumulated money. Plus, we already had in the budget about $9,000 for them for the replacement of the car camera. So then we're bumping it up that extra $17,000 so that we have enough for the $55,000 ballpark to pay for that first year of financing for the new body cameras and squad car cameras. We got the final tax rates for the TIFs. So we actually bumped up the Route 31 property tax revenue, that TIF, by $139,000. But on the flip side, we had to decrease the United TIF property tax by about $267,000. So as a result of that, we originally had that $750,000 transfer going from Route 31 to United TIF. We actually had to bump that up to make up for that decrease in revenue to about $1,020,000. The SSA fund had interest income of about $1,400 or so, which is kind of out of line with what we're really seeing coming in. So we decreased that by $1,300 because there's not really a lot of money to be making interest in that fund in the first place. We removed the $160,000 in engineering fees related to the central water tower, removed the $4.3 million construction related to the central water tower. We removed, we originally had purchasing the body cameras outright for $200 grand. We pulled the $200,000 purchase out, but we did add the $55,000 annual payment related to the body cameras and squad cameras. And then I went through, we had due revenue numbers. So I updated a lot of the current year projections for what we're seeing for another month of actuals coming in. So you'll see some of the projected fund balance and this current year have changed based on some increases in revenues. So from all those changes that I mentioned in these past 2 pages, the highlights in yellow are the ones that are any numbers that have really changed as part of the budget. The general fund previously was budgeted to increase $54,000. Now we're showing a net increase in the general fund of $184,000. Of note, we had originally had about 59% reserved to budgeted expenditures. That's actually increased to about 61.7%. So we are above that 60% range now in our reserve versus budgeted expenditures. And in total, the budgeted expenditures went from about $35.2 million to $30.7 million. So we did see a reduction in expenditures primarily due to that taking out the central water tower and delaying that until when that's appropriate. And then some other items looking at, obviously we mentioned that the HR generalist was taken out, but we will be reviewing the HR generalist along with police department admin assistant. And there were some comments at the strategic planning event about code enforcement officer or economic development coordinator. However, those positions, whether it be a full-time, part-time.
And if I can jump in real quick. So the HR general's position was something that we wanted to move forward with, but as Jason said, after strategic planning and giving it some second thought, I know the board has always had the thought of wanting to do more with economic development. And I mean, Jason's and he can do HR with me, and Mandy and I will do HR, and Chris Wagner, our administrative analyst, has been really good. So we'll hold the fort down, and we'll do our best to, keep doing the things that we were doing. As far as HR, we will eventually bring that back in some form. But in the meantime, what I'd like to do is shift the resources. I heard some comments about code enforcement. We only have one code officer, and it's tough. We don't have a lot of nights and weekends. So we're looking at a part-time code officer. We used to have 1.5. It does help to have somebody come in, even if it's for a few hours on a Wednesday. We used to do it 5 hours on a Wednesday, 5 hours on a Saturday. So you have people that are driving around when there's actual violations, when people are home. So that's something we're also looking to bring back. Any of these, typically, anytime a job would be brought back, if it's not in the budget when it's approved, it can come back as a budget amendment. So all we do is come back in after we reevaluate. Like, for instance, the police department administrative assistant, we mentioned that, I think about a month ago, that was always something that we were thinking about bringing back later during the fiscal year after we give it some more thought on how we want that to look. So we want to make sure that you're aware it's on the horizon. All of those things are needs. We're just prioritizing them right now.
How many employees are there, Steve? Do you know the number?
Yeah,
overall?
so there's 65 full-time equivalent employees roughly right now total. And after this, if you talk about the civil engineer and the part-time IT person that are already still in the budget, so you're looking, I think we're at around 67. So by the time this budget and any amendments are done, you're going to be looking at between 67 and 70, probably somewhere in that range.
Any questions or comments for Steve?
Nope, we're good.
I just have one item I wanted to bring up about, I don't know, Steve, you can help me out, what we can maybe add into, but I always thought it'd be nice if the village had some input on seniors. I'm not exactly sure how and what we would do. I know there's this DuPage Kane group that does a lot, which surprised me. They did 2,800 meals last year for 45 seniors, so that's neat. But one year we had a request, I think it was during COVID, to do bingo at Asbury Garden outside, and the senior services requested some money from us to pay for gifts. So something like that, or maybe, or have it at, they had mentioned even a local restaurant where they invite maybe not necessarily seniors that are part of this group, but our senior group to have an activity, and maybe we'd have some money in the budget for that. Is there a spot we could?
So there's a section in the legislative and board. So under the general fund, under administration, it's broken up in admin, finance, and then there's a section for the village board. There's a couple $1,000s typically put in there for community donations, but we have, if you're actually looking to do more than just contribute, like I believe that Kane Citizens Council, Senior Citizens Council, is looking for a donation to meet a funding gap for Meals on Wheels and things like that. In addition to that, if you wanted to do more initiatives, we did put $15,000 in the budget this year that's new, specifically to community events. It's in our non-departmental budget. So my suggestion would be is, you saw we have right now 184,000 roughly of money in the black in the general fund, plus that includes still the $600,000 transfer planned up to that amount to the capital fund. So we have the money to put some additional funding, maybe, I'm just throwing a number out here, could be 5,000-10,000, put it in that line item under community events, and we'll take some time maybe to think about what the board wants to do, or if these opportunities come up, at least we have the money in the budget to do that.
Yeah, that was my idea, not necessarily one specific item, but
Yeah, I agree.
if some opportunity comes up that we'd have something, even if it was, $5,000 or something to have in there.
I like Steve's idea of donating to a charity versus doing something sponsored by the village, because then we may put ourselves in the position where we've got every special interest group, saying, hey, where's mine?
Yeah, I'm not saying we would have the event, but it'd be outside of this Kane DuPage. See, if we donate the Kane DuPage, my only concern is that money doesn't necessarily have to be spent in North Aurora. They could spend it somewhere else.
What about doing something outreach wise, like promoting whatever that organization is on our Facebook page, or making our residents aware of services that are
Right.
already
No,
there?
I agree with all that. I'm just saying if we had some money somewhere so we can have a conversation about
Helping
like that.
seniors in North Aurora is where you're at.
Right.
And I agree,
It could
having
be
just
another night discussion, but what could that look like?
Yeah, there is a need, you know.
Like
and,
Laura said, I mean, there's 45 people that they serve. I gotta believe there's more than 45 that could use a meal or.
And they also do
assistance.
like handy Andy work, like,
Yeah.
you know.
How do we reach those people that may not have a computer or whatever,
Get their stairwell fixed so they don't trip and that type of thing. So I
Yeah,
think
who
that's,
knows what that is,
yeah.
right?
Well, I think the North Aurora money should go to North Aurora residents.
Yeah, that.
As opposed to the other group is great. Obviously, they're doing good work and doing good things, but if the money's gonna be coming from here, then I'd
I
rather
don't
see
think
it.
we want to do really the project, but.
No, I'm just saying that it
Yeah.
should be for residents
Right.
in our town.
And I would actually, instead of calling it community events, there's a couple ways to do it. So the line item in the budget is community events, and then underneath it says special events, $15,000. You can either drop another line under that. So in the same community events, we can call it events or sponsorships, or events/sponsorships, and you can have $5,000 or $10,000 under that specifically for community donations or community group support. And then the thought process would be is if there was ever a substantial, donation or suggestion, or the board had an idea and wanted to bring it back, you could always bring it to a COW meeting and say, hey, I have an idea for a program. It's going to cost us $5,000 for seniors. When you bring it back, the board says, that's great. The money's sitting in the budget for it.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good plan.
Sounds good.
Before we move on, I know we're at the very end, but I failed to say this one more time. Want to thank Mandy Flatt, who is our accounting and finance manager, who picked up a lot of slack when Bill left. She did an amazing job putting a lot of the budget together. And then I can't thank Jason enough, who came on and I didn't have to sit with him at all at the beginning. Jason's like, I got this. I can do this. I've done it before, Steve. I know what I'm doing. And I'll come see you when I have my questions. And he picked up and just ran with it. And honestly, I think it's a really good budget document. So it was a real team effort this year.
Well done.
Yeah, excellent.
Good job.
All right, that ends our discussion. We're going to be going to exec session, discuss minutes or release of minutes. So motion adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?